Hey guys. Tonight we're stepping back into a world where warmth was a luxury and survival was a quiet act of faith. You open your eyes to a pale dawn, breath hanging in the air like smoke. The wooden walls around you creak softly, brittle with frost. Your blanket, if you can call it that, is a pile of coarse wool, heavy with last night's moisture. Your toes are numb, your fingers ache, and you start to understand why medieval people prayed so often. In this world, even getting out of bed is a small miracle. You'd last about an hour here, maybe less. No heated floors, no puffy jackets, no peppermint lattes, just wind whistling through cracks in the wood and a faint smell of damp straw. Yeah, you probably wouldn't make it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It's always fun to imagine us all drifting into this ancient chill together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push the wool aside and sit up. The morning light spills through gaps in the shutter. Silver and cold, your breath makes tiny clouds that dissolve as quickly as your hope for warmth. The floorboards sting your bare feet, tiny knives of ice cutting at your skin. You can almost hear your body whispering, "Why are we doing this again?" Outside, the world is frozen into silence. No birdsong, no rustle of leaves, just the muffled weight of snow pressing on everything. Your little hut stands alone on a white plain, smoke curling weakly from the chimney like a dying sigh. The air smells faintly of burned wood and boiled cabbage. Somewhere nearby, a rooster coughs, a dry, pitiful sound that doesn't quite become a crow. You pull on your wool tunic, stiff with frost. The wool scratches like sandpaper, but it's the only thing standing between you and the cold that wants to crawl inside your bones. In the Middle Ages, warmth wasn't comfort, it was survival. And every winter morning began like a test. How many more days can you make it before the cold wins? Your neighbors are already up. You can hear the squeak of a cartwheel frozen in its axle. The muffled thump of someone chopping wood. Firewood, of course, is worth more than silver. The forest is half a day's walk away, and most of the trees were cut last summer. You remember the village talk. Don't burn too much too fast. Winter's only begun, but when your child shivers in the night, who cares about spring? You shuffle to the hearth, coaxing a small flame from the ashes of last night's fire. It catches slowly, like an old man clearing his throat. You feed it bits of straw, a handful of twigs, whispering little prayers that the damp wood will cooperate. When the first spark glows, a warmth no bigger than your hand feels like heaven. The sound of crackling fills the room. You hold your palms out to the fire, watching the skin change from white to pink. The smell of burning pine resin drifts up, sweet, sharp, comforting, and for a brief moment, it feels like the world isn't trying to kill you. The stew pot still hangs from its hook. Last night's leftovers, a sad mixture of turnip, onion, and something that might have been barley a few weeks ago. You stir it slowly, scraping the thick film from the top. It's not appetizing, but it's warm. That's all that matters. In winter, flavor is a luxury, heat is life. You hear a knock at the door. 3 quick raps. It's your neighbor, a man with a face like weathered leather. He's wrapped in 2 cloaks and still shivering. He asks if you've got any dry wood left. You hesitate. The stack by the wall isn't much, and you'll need it tonight. But you nod and hand him a few sticks anyway. Because in a medieval winter, generosity isn't kindness, it's strategy. If you help others survive, maybe they'll help you when your luck runs out. As the day creeps forward, you step outside. The snow crunches under your boots, crisp and hollow. Every sound seems sharper in the cold, the distant creak of a cart, the bark of a dog, the ringing echo of someone splitting logs. The sky above is a flat, unbroken gray, heavy with the promise of more snow. You look at the distant forest line, where shadows move like ghosts. Somewhere out there, wolves are hungry too. People tell stories of travelers frozen mid-step, bodies discovered in spring still clutching their cloaks. You'd laugh if it didn't sound so believable. Back inside, the fire is now a bright, living thing. You sit close, your back to the wind that sneaks through the cracks. The walls creak softly, as if whispering secrets of past winters. Some survived, some didn't. You wrap yourself in another layer of wool, pull the hood over your head, and close your eyes. For a moment, you imagine the luxury of a modern heater humming in the corner, or the glow of an electric light. But then again, maybe you'd miss this silence, the kind that presses on your chest, reminding you that you're alive because you fought for it. You open your eyes to the dance of flames. In that flickering orange light, you catch glimpses of everything that matters: warmth, life, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Outside, the snow keeps falling, gentle and endless. Inside, your little world holds steady, one breath at a time. The fire crackles, the wind sighs, and you lean closer, hands outstretched. This, you realize, is what survival sounds like. Tomorrow, you'll need to find more wood, fix that roof beam, maybe patch the hole near the window. But for now, just for now, you've made it through another dawn of the medieval winter. And somehow, that feels like victory. The fire crackles softly behind you as you pull your rough wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. It smells faintly of sheep and smoke, a scent that would make a modern laundry detergent commercial faint. But here, it's the perfume of survival. You can almost hear your own heartbeat under the layers of wool, linen, and stubborn willpower. In the Middle Ages, fashion wasn't about looking good, it was about not freezing to death. You step outside into the gray morning light. The wind greets you like an old enemy, sharp and unforgiving. You brace yourself, your cloak flapping around your knees, and mutter a few words that are probably not in the church's approved vocabulary. The villagers trudging by look the same, bundled in whatever scraps they could stitch together. It's like a parade of moving haystacks. Wool was the great equalizer of the medieval winter. The poor wore coarse, itchy stuff that left red marks on their necks. The rich had softer blends, sometimes even lined with fur, but even they couldn't escape the smell when it got damp. Everyone knew that staying warm meant layering. Linen closest to the skin, wool over that, and maybe fur if you were lucky or sneaky enough to trap one of the Lord's rabbits. You watch an old woman shuffle past with what looks like half a sheep draped around her shoulders. She nods at you knowingly, the kind of nod that says, "Yeah, we've both made some questionable fashion choices today." You nod back. Inside your hut, Your family is busy at work. Your wife spins wool from a pile of tangled fleece. Her fingers quick and practiced. The wheel creaks rhythmically, a steady lullaby against the howling wind outside. Your eldest son is patching a cloak, one that's been mended so many times it's more repair than original fabric. Medieval people didn't throw clothes away, they resurrected them. Again and again. You take a seat by the fire. Rubbing your hands together, the warmth soaks in slowly, like sunlight trapped in your bones. The smell of lanolin, natural oil from the wool, lingers on your hands. Funny thing is, it keeps your skin from cracking. Medieval skincare, courtesy of sheep, somewhere, a modern influencer just gasped. You remember when your neighbor's boy fell through the ice last winter. They wrapped him in blankets and laid him by the fire. But it was the wool, dry, heavy, stubborn, that kept his body heat from escaping. He lived, barely, and ever since, the village women have whispered, wool saves more lives than prayer. A small laugh escapes you. Maybe both. You mumble, stirring the fire. The day stretches thin, like the thread on the spinning wheel. You glance out the door. The sun is a pale disk. More decoration than warmth. A group of children are running through the snow, their cloaks flapping like wings. One boy trips and falls, vanishing into a white puff. He comes up laughing, snow dusting his hair. Kids have always had a way of finding joy where adults see only frostbite. You think of your own cloak, once a fine thing, passed down from your father. It's patched with bits of linen and fur, stitched with thread so thick it could hold a roof beam. The edges are frayed, but it's yours. When you pull it tight, it feels like home, like continuity. In this frozen world, that's something to hold on to. As the day fades, the village begins to smell of cooking, smoke, onions, and something meaty, though you doubt it's actual meat. The wind carries the scent through the cracks of your door, teasing your stomach. You know dinner will be thin stew again, but the fire will make it taste almost rich. You sit near the hearth, watching your wife repair a pair of mittens. She hums softly, an old tune about spring. Her breath fogs in the air, and for a moment, the tune almost sounds like hope. Do you think it'll be warmer tomorrow? You ask. She laughs quietly. Tomorrow? No, but maybe next month. You smile. Humor is another kind of blanket here, thin, but warm enough to keep despair out. Outside, the wind changes direction, slipping through the cracks with a low whistle. You grab a scrap of wool and stuff it into the gap. There's always another draft, another leak, another reminder that the world beyond your walls doesn't care if you make it to morning. But you care, and that's enough. By the time night falls, your family gathers close around the fire. The shadows flicker against the walls, twisting like ghosts. You watch the flames dance across your son's face, his eyes half closed with sleep. The dog curls up near the door, nose tucked under its tail. The sound of the spinning wheel has faded, replaced by soft breathing and the occasional pop of a log splitting in the fire. You look around your little hut, smoke-stained, drafty, cramped, and feel an odd sense of pride. You've built this warmth with your own hands. You've trapped comfort in the middle of a frozen world. And as you stretch your legs toward the fire, one thought crosses your mind. People today pay extra for wool-rich blankets, while you've been living inside one your whole life. Outside, The snow falls heavier now, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, the wool, the fire, and the rhythm of breath weave together into a small, stubborn symphony of life. You pull your cloak tighter, smile faintly, and whisper into the quiet, still warm. The next morning greets you with the same gray breathless cold. The kind of chill that sneaks under doors, seeps through walls, and settles directly into your bones as if it's paying rent. You stretch under your wool blanket, reluctant to move because you know what waits beyond its edges, air so sharp it could cut glass. Still, you rise, because the fire has died overnight, and in the Middle Ages, the day doesn't begin until you coax warmth back from the ashes. You kneel at the hearth. The embers are faint, dull red spots under a blanket of white ash. You blow gently, your breath shaky from the cold. Nothing. Again, a whisper stronger this time, come on. Live a little. Finally, one spark flares like a sleepy eye-opening. You feed it straw, then splinters, then sticks. The fire stirs, reluctant but alive. It's the closest thing you'll ever have to a pet dragon. The smell of smoke fills the room, clinging to your clothes, hair, and even your soul. But that smell means survival. Fire is the center of your life, the heart that keeps your small world beating. Without it, you're just another frozen statue waiting for spring to discover. You hear your wife's voice from behind you, soft and raspy. It's burning again? You nod, still blowing on the coals. For now. She wraps a shawl around her shoulders and places a pot over the fire. The pot's bottom is blackened from years of use. You don't even remember its original color. The stew inside begins to bubble lazily, releasing a scent that's half comfort, half desperation. Boiled onion and yesterday's bread crusts. You sit back and watch the fire. The way the light dances on the walls makes the room look alive again. You remember stories your father told you, that in the old days, before the forests thinned, people burned oak, ash, and you. Now, you're down to pine scraps and dried peat. Still, every flame feels like a tiny rebellion against winter itself. You poke the logs with an iron rod, sparks leaping like fireflies. There's a strange beauty in that brief, golden chaos. Somewhere deep down, you think maybe humans have always loved fire not just for warmth, but for company. It talks to you, crackling, hissing, sighing, like a friend who complains but never leaves. Outside, the world looks dead. Snow piles against the door. Wind wails through the trees. But inside, the fire paints everything with a soft orange glow. You reach your hands out to it, feeling life return in waves. You could almost cry from how good it feels. Not that you would. You're a medieval adult. And those people only cried when someone died or stole their last loaf of bread. The children wake, rubbing their eyes. They gather near the hearth instinctively. Small bodies forming a ring around the warmth. You hand them bowls of stew. And they eat in silence. Each puff of steam rising like tiny prayers. The dog inches closer too. Tail tucked under. Eyes hopeful. You toss it a crust. And it devours it as though it's the finest feast in Europe. You remember when your neighbor's chimney collapsed last month. The family barely escaped the smoke. And they've been relying on borrowed embers ever since. That's how it worked here. You shared fire. Not because you were kind, but because next week, it might be you knocking on their door. begging for a coal in the dark. As the morning drags on, the fire becomes your anchor. You dry damp mittens by it, toast bits of bread, and watch as frost melts from the window's edge. It's hypnotic, watching water drip where ice once ruled. Proof that warmth still has a say in this frozen kingdom. By midday, the flames have shrunk to a dull glow. You add another log, counting silently. 1, 2, 3 left in the pile. If the snow keeps up, those might be all you have until next week. You sigh, wondering if you can barter for more. Maybe that broken sickle could fetch some wood at the market. Or maybe not. People guard firewood like treasure now. You remember a saying, gold buys food, but wood buys life, and somehow, you believe it. The day passes slow, measured by how often you feed the fire. When dusk comes, the sky bruises purple and black, the wind howling louder, as if offended by your stubbornness. You stack more wood, determined to keep the room glowing. The children curl up by the hearth again, their cheeks flushed, eyes heavy. Your wife hums while patching a cloak, her face lit by the dancing orange light. It's a portrait of survival, painted not in oils but in warmth and patience. You lean back, watching the firelight flicker across the ceiling. The smoke curls up through the chimney, carrying your small victories into the night sky. You think about all the people across the kingdom doing the same thing, guarding their flames like sacred relics. Some say fire is a gift from God. Others whisper it came from devils deep below. Historians still argue about which story people truly believed. But in this moment, you don't care, divine or not. Fire is the only thing standing between you and the frozen grave outside. You add one last log before bed. The flames flare bright, crackling like laughter. The sound fills the silence. The way your heart fills with a quiet, stubborn hope. You lie down on the straw mattress, the warmth brushing your face, and you whisper to the fire, half asleep, "Stay alive till morning, and I'll do the same." Outside, the wind howls, but the fire answers softly, each pop and hiss a promise that the night will pass. The smell of smoke still clings to your clothes when morning arrives. Less a scent and more a statement. You survived another night. Your stomach growls before your eyes even open. Hunger is the quiet companion of winter, always waiting patiently beside the bed. You push aside the rough wool blanket and shuffle toward the hearth, where the last embers from last night's fire glow faintly like half-buried rubies. The pot from yesterday still hangs there, lid crooked, its sides blackened with soot. Inside, congealed soup, pale and lumpy, thick enough to stand a spoon in. You stir it lazily, hearing the wooden ladle scrape the bottom. It's cold, but at least it's food. Welcome to the medieval kitchen, or rather, what counts as one. No shiny countertops, no ovens preheating to 350 degrees. Just a pit of fire, a few pots, and the eternal scent of smoke that will follow you into the afterlife. You glance up. The rafters above your head are dark with decades of soot. In some houses, the buildup got so thick that flakes of burnt grease would snow down when the wind blew. No one thought to clean it. It was insulation of a sort. Everything here has a double purpose, even filth. You bend over the pot again, adding a splash of water from a wooden bucket to loosen the stew. The water is half frozen, with a thin crust of ice on top. You break it with your fingers and pour carefully. Trying not to spill, every drop counts. There's a soft hiss as the icy water meets the embers. You give the mixture a stir, listening to the slow, reluctant bubble of life returning to breakfast. Your wife joins you, wrapped in a shawl. Her cheeks are pale but her hands move with the automatic precision of survival. She sprinkles a pinch of salt, precious, rationed, and hands you a slice of bread that could easily double as a weapon. You both eat in silence, chewing slowly. The bread softens in the warm stew, turning into something almost edible. In winter, medieval cooking was less about taste and more about strategy. You weren't feeding cravings, you were feeding endurance. People learned to stretch every ingredient, to turn scraps into meals and meals into memories. If you were lucky, you had a bit of cured meat hanging near the rafters. If you were really lucky, a neighbor didn't steal it while you slept. You remember once hearing a saying in the village, "Smoke is the spice of the poor." And looking around your little kitchen, you can see why. The fire smokes constantly, curling around your face, your eyes watering until you look like you've just read a sad poem. You cough, wave it away, but secretly, you don't mind. The smoke means the fire's alive. The fire means you will be too. You notice a small crack near the window where frost has crept in overnight, painting delicate white veins across the wood. Beautiful, in a cruel sort of way. You scrape at it absently with a spoon. The frost bites back. Your daughter runs in, giggling, clutching something in her mittened hands. She opens them to reveal an egg, small, misshapen, a miracle in this weather. One of the hens must have defied the cold. You and your wife exchange a look that says everything. Tonight, there will be something special in the pot. Cooking, you realize, is a kind of faith. You don't know if the food will stretch to tomorrow. But you cook anyway. You don't know if the fire will last the night. But you feed it anyway. The kitchen is where survival becomes ritual. As the day drags on, the smell of cooking drifts out of every hut in the village. A mixture of burning wood, boiled turnips, and desperation. You can almost identify households by their scent. Old onion stew on one side, cabbage and hope on the other. A neighbor stops by, wrapped in layers of linen, eyes red from smoke. She asks for a cup of broth for her sick husband. You hesitate only a second before handing it over. There's not much left, but refusing would curse your own hearth. People believe kindness feeds the fire. By afternoon, you're out collecting more kindling. The wind bites your face, snowflakes stinging your skin. Every stick you pick up feels heavier than it should. But you keep going. The fire won't feed itself. When you return home, the scent of stew greets you like an embrace. The pot hums quietly over the flame, steam curling toward the ceiling. You close your eyes, letting the warmth brush your face. There's comfort in that sound, the steady bubble of food cooking. The heartbeat of your little world. You dip a ladle and taste. Still bland, but your tongue doesn't care. Hunger has a way of editing expectations. You add a dash of dried herbs, a pinch of something that might have been thyme last year. The flavor deepens slightly, or maybe you're just imagining it. You sit with your family as night falls. Bowls in hand, the fire crackles, the walls hum softly with wind. The stew is thin, but you laugh anyway, telling old stories about warm summers that feel like myths now. Your son jokes about inventing a magic pot, that cooks food without fire. You chuckle and say, sure, when dragons start paying rent. The historians of your world, centuries in the future, will debate how people like you managed to survive on so little. But the truth is simple. You didn't just eat to live, you believed while you cooked. You believed warmth would come again, that snow would melt, that someday your grandchildren would tell stories about these winters with a smile instead of a shiver. As you crawl into bed, the smell of smoke clings to your hair. Your stomach isn't full, but it's quiet. The fire still murmurs in the corner. And you whisper a small goodnight to it, as though it's part of the family. Outside, the wind moans across the frozen fields. Inside, your kitchen glows, a little island of defiance in an ocean of cold. You close your eyes, and the last thing you hear is the gentle hiss of boiling stew. A reminder that life, however fragile, still simmers on. The next few days blur together under the same pale sun, the same brittle air, and the same sound, the steady crackle of fire and the gurgle of soup in the pot. You've lost count of how many times you've eaten the same stew. But you tell yourself variety is overrated. After all, in the Middle Ages, different flavor just meant different root vegetable. You sit by the fire, ladle in hand, staring at the familiar mixture, turnips, onions, maybe a lonely bean or two if you're lucky. The broth is thin and cloudy, more suggestion than substance. Still, it's hot, and that counts for more than taste. Winter diets were brutal. Fresh food was a memory, meat, a rumor. Everything you ate had to come from what you'd managed to preserve during the brief mercy of summer. Barley, rye, lentils, salted fish. Each bite carried the echo of warmer days. You learned quickly that hunger wasn't a crisis, it was a lifestyle. You tear off a piece of bread, hard, dry, unyielding. The loaf thuds when you drop it. And you joke quietly to yourself that if the Vikings ever invade again, you could just throw bread at them. Your teeth protest as you bite into it. But the stew softens it a little, turning the weapon into food again. Your wife sits beside you, carefully slicing a sliver of dried meat into the pot. It's from the last piece you've got, smoked back in autumn. The thin strip curls in the heat, releasing a smell so rich your stomach tightens in reflex. The children's eyes widen. You all wait a moment before tasting, reverent, almost silent. The flavor is smoky, salty, a memory of plenty. You close your eyes and chew slowly, pretending there's more. Outside, snow falls again, thicker this time. The world shrinks to the glow of the hearth and the smell of soup. You remember hearing the monks say, "Winter humbles the stomach, so the soul can rise." You're not sure about the soul part, but your stomach has definitely achieved enlightenment. The dog shifts near your feet, sighing as it dreams of chasing rabbits. You laugh softly. Keep dreaming, old friend. Even the rabbits are hiding. Food in winter wasn't just scarce, it was monotonous. People got creative out of sheer necessity. You'd thicken soup with breadcrumbs, flavor it with beer, or chew herbs dried months ago. Sometimes, you'd boil the same bones 3, 4, even 5 times, until they dissolved into ghostly flavor. You'd think of the feast days, when the church bells rang and you could finally eat something that once had a heartbeat. The truth is, medieval winters weren't about eating well, they were about not starving. Families rationed by the handful. Some even marked walls to track how much grain was left, scratching off lines each week like a countdown to salvation. You learned to be grateful for the smallest things: a spoon of honey, a slice of cheese so old it could walk itself to the table. You glanced toward the storage chest in the corner. Inside, a few sacks of grain, a jar of pickled beets, and some apples, wrinkled and bruised but still edible. Every time you open that chest, you whisper a small prayer that it'll last until spring. The children finish their stew and lick the bowls, careful not to waste a drop. You smile. You used to do the same when you were their age. You remember your mother's voice, saying, "Don't leave a single crumb, God counts them." You never knew if she meant it literally, but you didn't dare test the theory. Later that afternoon, you walk through the village. Smoke rises from chimneys, carrying the same scent: stew, smoke, hope. You pass the blacksmith's house, where the fire burns hotter but the food smells no better. Even the wealthy are down to salted pork and stale grain by now. Winter doesn't discriminate, it starves everyone equally. You hear someone laugh behind you, a rare sound this time of year. It's the miller's wife, stirring a pot outside. "Found an old carrot," she says proudly, waving it like treasure. You grin and raise your ladle in salute. It's the little victories that keep people sane. As evening comes, you return home to find your wife setting out bowls again. The fire is low, but the air feels softer, like the house itself is breathing slower. You sit down, hands cupped around the warm bowl, the heat soaking through your fingers. The first sip burns your tongue, but it's worth it. It tastes of earth, smoke, and stubbornness. You look around your tiny room, at the flickering shadows, the cracked walls, the quiet faces, and you realize that this meal, humble as it is, binds you all together. It's more than food, it's a promise that tomorrow still exists. As you scrape the last bits from your bowl, you can almost taste summer again. Just a hint. Maybe that's memory playing tricks on you. Or maybe it's hope, disguised as flavor. You lean back, sighing, full in spirit if not in stomach. Outside, the snow keeps falling, slow, relentless, beautiful. Inside, the pot still bubbles quietly on the fire. And you think, not for the first time, that as long as that sound continues, everything will be all right. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder what historians will call this someday. The age of hardship, the age of endurance. No, you decide it's something simpler, the age of soup. You laugh softly at the thought, cover the pot, and crawl into bed. The last thing you smell before sleep takes you is smoke and onions, the scent of survival itself. The night creeps in again, the kind that feels less like time and more like a force pressing against your walls. The fire has dimmed to a faint glow. The air inside your hut so cold that your breath drifts upward in pale ribbons. You hesitate before lying down, because you know what's waiting, the bed, or rather, the straw and cloth arrangement that the villagers generously call a bed. You pull back the wool cover, and immediately your hand recoils. The sheets, if that word even applies, are stiff with frost. The straw underneath crackles like dry leaves. It's as if someone replaced your mattress with a frozen field. You laugh softly, a sound halfway between amusement and despair. Ice in the bed, you mutter. Luxury accommodation. 4 stars, if the stars mean frostbite. Your wife slides in beside you, shivering so hard the straw rustles. She buries her feet under yours. It's a nightly ritual, the desperate trade of body heat, as intimate as it is strategic. Your children sleep close by, huddled together under layers of old blankets and cloaks. The dog curls up near your feet. One more small furnace in the long battle against the cold. You all become a single, tangled shape of survival. The roof groans as wind presses against it. Somewhere outside, the door bangs softly in the gusts, and the sound reminds you of distant waves, except these ones carry snow instead of salt. You pull the covers tighter. The fabric smells of smoke, wool, and something vaguely sour from too many unwashed nights. But right now, it smells like safety. You close your eyes, and the chill finds the one patch of exposed skin at the back of your neck. It's as if the cold itself is alive, probing for weaknesses, whispering, "You missed a spot." You tuck your chin down and exhale under the blanket, trying to trap your own breath for warmth. It's not elegant, but it works. Beds in medieval winters weren't comfort, they were strategy. The wealthier folks stuffed their mattresses with feathers, while the poor made do with straw, hay, or reeds. The problem? Straw absorbs moisture, and moisture means ice. Each night, you sleep on a frozen sponge that hisses faintly when your body heat tries to melt it. By morning, it's like lying on a cloud made of regret. You shift, and the straw rustles again. A sharp piece pokes your side. You swear quietly, nothing too sinful. Just enough to release the frustration. Somewhere in the dark, your wife chuckles. "At least it's not wet tonight," she whispers. She's right. Some nights, frost sneaks in so deep that even the inside of the bed freezes. People wake up to find little ice crystals glistening on their blankets, catching the firelight like tiny diamonds. Romantic, if you ignore the fact that your toes have gone numb. You remember hearing of a nobleman once who had his servants warm his bed with metal pans filled with coals before he lay down. He'd slip into his sheets as if entering paradise. You can't decide whether to envy him or laugh, probably both. The closest you've come to that luxury is sleeping beside a very warm goat one night. It was the best sleep you'd had in months. Your children murmur softly in their sleep. One of them twitches, another sighs. You reach out instinctively, resting your hand on their blanket. Their small breaths fog the air, and you count them one by one like prayers. You think of all the parents who didn't get to count this winter. The cold takes people silently, sometimes mid-dream, sometimes mid-sentence. It doesn't roar, it whispers. You shift again, adjusting the straw beneath you. The bed creaks like an old door. You try to remember what comfort felt like, maybe last summer. Lying in the grass, sunlight warming your skin, you make a quiet promise to yourself. When spring comes, you'll sleep outside for a week straight. No walls, no smoke. No frozen bedding, just air that doesn't bite. For now, though, you focus on staying still. Movement lets the cold slip in. Stillness keeps the warmth where it belongs. You listen to the fire dying, to the wind scraping against the shutters, to your heartbeat keeping time with the night. There's a funny thing about cold. It sharpens the mind even as it dulls the body. You start thinking of strange things, of how many generations before you did exactly this, of how many more will after. You wonder if they'll remember you. Or maybe they won't. But they'll remember the feeling, the fight, the frost, the fragile warmth of sharing a bed against a world made of ice. You smile faintly at the thought. History might forget your name. But tonight, you've beaten winter one more time. And really, that's enough. Your wife shifts beside you, murmuring something sleepy. You whisper back, "Go to sleep. The fire's still alive." And it is. Barely. The faint orange light licks the walls, throwing slow shadows across the ceiling. You watch it until your eyes grow heavy. The cold nips at your feet. But you don't care anymore. You've learned the rhythm of winter, the push and pull between freezing and feeling. As sleep comes, you think of the absurdity of it all. People in the future will spend fortunes on mattresses and heated blankets. You'd laugh if you weren't so tired. You already know the real secret. Warmth isn't in the bed, it's in the bodies beside you. Breathing softly through the night. You drift off, the straw crackling faintly as if applauding your endurance. Outside, snowflakes pile higher against the door. Inside, your small human warmth glows in defiance. The bed may be half ice, but the heart that lies upon it is fire. Morning again, you wake up inside your cocoon of wool, linen, and sheer stubbornness. The cold still presses at the walls. But your first thought isn't despair, it's calculation. You know exactly how many layers you'll need to survive the walk outside. 3 if the wind is mild. 4 if it's cruel. And 5 if it's the kind of day that makes ravens drop mid-flight. You sit up, every joint cracking like an old door hinge, and reach for your clothes. They're stiff, hanging by the fire where they've spent the night trying to dry. The first layer, linen. Thin and scratchy but necessary. It's not for warmth, it's for wicking moisture. Though no one in the Middle Ages used that term. They just knew if your sweat froze, you'd die. Simple science, discovered through generations of unfortunate volunteers. Next comes the tunic, rough wool. The color of mud and twice as heavy. You slide it over your head and feel the immediate embrace of itchy salvation. The smell of smoke is trapped in the fibers. You're pretty sure the fabric is 30% lanolin, 20% dust, and 50% survival instinct. You pull on another tunic because yes, layering was medieval fashion's only rule, the more ridiculous you looked, the longer you'd live. Then the cloak, thick, coarse, and big enough to double as a tent in emergencies. You tie it with a leather cord, already frayed from years of use. You add a hood, mittens made of felted wool, and boots lined with straw. It's not exactly runway material, unless the runway is frozen solid, but you feel almost invincible. Almost. Your wife is dressing the children, wrapping scarves around their faces until they look like small, disgruntled snowmen. The dog shakes itself awake, sneezing at the cloud of ash it kicks up. You laugh. "Don't look at me like that." You say to it, "You've got fur. I've got laundry." Stepping outside feels like walking into an argument with nature. The wind slaps your face instantly, howling across the frozen fields. You pull your hood tighter and press forward, boots crunching in the snow. Every step sounds like breaking glass. Your breath fogs so thick you could almost sculpt with it. Layers are your armor, but they come with a price. Move too much, and you sweat too much, and you freeze. It's a delicate dance, a winter waltz where one wrong step means frostbite. You learn to move slowly, efficiently, like someone trying to sneak past the gods of cold without waking them. As you make your way toward the woods, you pass other villagers wrapped in their own bizarre combinations of fabric and hope. One man's wearing what appears to be two cloaks, a sack around his shoulders, and, unless your eyes deceive you, a child's blanket as a scarf. He nods to you with solemn dignity. Fashion, medieval edition. The women carry baskets lined with wool, protecting what little they have from freezing, bread, candles, a few onions that look as tired as everyone else. Children chase one another through the snow, their laughter puffing into the air like smoke signals to the sun. You can't help but smile. Even bundled in 10 layers, joy still leaks through. You reach the edge of the forest. The trees stand silent, dusted white, their branches heavy and still. You adjust your cloak and start collecting wood. Each piece feels colder than the last. And your fingers, clumsy in mittens, struggle to grip. After a while, you stop feeling them altogether. That's usually a bad sign. But you've learned not to panic. Wiggle your fingers, curse a little, keep going. When your basket is full, you start the long walk back. The wind has picked up, stinging your face through the hood. You wonder if anyone ever truly gets used to this cold, or if survival just means getting better at pretending you are. Back at the hut, you shake the snow from your cloak. It falls in clumps onto the floor, hissing as it melts near the fire. Your wife looks up and laughs. You look like a walking snowbank. You grin, tugging off the outer layer. Better that than a frozen husband. You hang your cloak by the hearth, where it steams gently. The children peel off their mittens and boots, holding their hands near the flames, sighing in relief. The smell of wet wool fills the room again. It's not pleasant, but it's home. Later, as you sit by the fire, you realize something curious. The layers you wear aren't just to fight the cold. They're layers of effort, of persistence, of every day you've refused to quit. Each stitch in your clothing holds a story of someone's hands spinning wool, someone's patience weaving cloth, someone's prayer whispered over it before it left the loom. You look down at your sleeve, frayed and mended a dozen times, and smile. Still holding, you whisper. Your wife hears you. What? Nothing, you reply. Just talking to my clothes. She shakes her head, half amused, half exhausted. Maybe you've finally gone mad. Probably, you say, pulling the blanket tighter, but at least I'll be warm while I lose my mind. Outside, the wind sighs against the shutters, and you swear it almost sounds like laughter. Inside, layers of fabric, love, and firelight wrap around you. Each thread a victory, each breath a reminder. The world beyond your door may be endless white and bitter wind. But here, in your small fortress of wool, you sit wrapped not just in warmth, but in defiance. Because the secret isn't how many layers you wear. It's that you never stop adding them. The morning light that filters through your shutters isn't really light. It's more like a pale gray suggestion that the sun still exists somewhere behind the clouds. You rub your eyes, listening to the groaning of the wind outside. It's another workday, which in medieval winter terms means you'll be cold, hungry, and tired, but you'll still go out there because the land doesn't wait for warmth. You sit up slowly, muscles stiff from the night's chill. The fire in the hearth is just a ghost now. A faint red glow surrounded by white ash. You coax it back to life, muttering to it like an old friend who's forgotten your name. The children stir. Your wife wraps her shawl tighter. And you begin your morning ritual of layering linen, wool, cloak, resolve. Outside, the world greets you with silence thick enough to feel. The air is sharp, biting the inside of your nose as you step out. The ground crunches under your boots. A sound that feels almost satisfying until you realize it's the frozen earth laughing at you. You head toward the fields. Though calling them fields right now feels generous. They're just white plains broken by the black skeletons of fences and the occasional tree leaning under the weight of snow. Nothing grows, but there's always work to do. You chop wood, mend fences, check the animals, gather anything that hasn't frozen solid. The cold doesn't excuse you, it dares you. Your hands ache before the first hour is done. The axe handle feels like ice. And your gloves might as well be paper. You swing anyway, each strike sending up a spray of frost from the bark. The sound echoes across the valley, thunk, crack, breath, repeat. Somewhere nearby, you hear another villager doing the same. It's almost musical, this symphony of survival. You pause to catch your breath. The wind stings your cheeks. Your breath rising in quick clouds. You flex your fingers and laugh bitterly. Still attached, you whisper, just to check. Further down the road, a group of men are hauling logs on a sled. Their faces are red, their beards crusted with ice. They wave as they pass. A silent nod that says, "We're all fools together. No one talks much out here, it wastes breath. And besides, the cold steals words before they leave your lips." Back near the barn, your animals wait. The cows huddle close, breath steaming in the frigid air. You toss hay into their troughs. The smell of it sweet and warm compared to the frozen world outside. The pigs grunt softly under their straw bedding, and you envy them their thick hides and simple minds. You check the water trough and curse quietly, it's frozen solid again. You grab a stick and start breaking the ice. It shatters in chunks, the sound sharp and satisfying. You can feel your reflection staring back from the water beneath, hollow eyes. Cracked lips, a face that's part frost, part stubbornness. Work in winter isn't about achievement. It's about endurance. No one expects progress when the ground itself is iron. You work so you don't freeze. You move so you don't think about hunger. You exist in motion. By midday, your cloak is stiff with frost. Every exhale leaves crystals in your beard. The sun appears briefly, weak, pale, half-hearted, then disappears again behind clouds that look like stone. You take a bite of cold bread from your pocket. It's hard enough to chip a tooth, but the crunch somehow feels like defiance. You look around at the village, tiny figures scattered across the white landscape, each bent to their own task. Smoke trails rise from chimneys, thin and gray against the sky. There's a strange beauty in it, the quiet cooperation of survival. No one complains because there's no point. Complaints don't melt snow. You remember stories your father told you about winters so fierce that even kings sent prayers to farmers, begging for food. Back then, the poor worked while the rich prayed. Now, centuries later, historians still debate which group had the harder job. You smile. You've seen both hands of the world, one calloused, one clutching a rosary. You know which one keeps the fire burning. As the afternoon fades, You carry the last bundle of wood back to your hut. Your arms ache, your fingers barely bend, but you feel a strange pride anyway. The pile by your door is taller now. That's your wealth, stacked, dry, promising warmth through another night. Your wife greets you with a tired smile. She takes your cloak, brushing off snow. The children rush to see what you've brought, as if you might have found treasure instead of firewood. You touzle their hair and tell them maybe tomorrow you'll dig for gold under the frozen pond. They giggle, and for a moment, the cold seems to loosen its grip on the world. Dinner is the same: bread, broth, and the kind of silence that feels peaceful rather than empty. You eat by the fire, your muscles heavy but satisfied. Outside, the wind rises again, rattling the shutters, reminding you it's still there, always there. You lean back, eyes half closed, and think about how strange it is that you can feel both exhausted and grateful at once. The day didn't give you much, but it didn't take you either, and that's what passes for victory here. Before bed, you step outside once more. The stars are faint pinpricks above the clouds. The air burns your lungs with each breath, but the quiet is absolute. You stand there, wrapped in layers, surrounded by cold that feels infinite, and for a moment, you laugh softly. Because even in this frozen world, you realize, work isn't the punishment. It's the proof you're still alive. You turn back toward the glow of your hut, the thin trail of smoke rising into the night. Inside, there's warmth, flickering and fragile, but it's yours. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again. By the next morning, the laughter has faded into memory. But something quieter takes its place, something older and heavier. You wake to the deep, measured toll of the church bell rolling through the frost. It's not the sound of festivity this time. It's slower, stern, a reminder. You pull on your cloak and step outside. The air is still, the kind of cold that steals your breath and replaces it with silence. Around you, the village stirs, doors creaking open, figures wrapped in wool and faith shuffling through the snow toward the chapel. You join them, walking slowly, your boots crunching in unison with the others. It's Sunday. And in winter, that means something different. When the fields sleep and the world freezes, faith becomes the last fire still burning. The chapel looks smaller today, half buried in snowdrifts, its roof lined with icicles that gleam like teeth. But when you push open the heavy wooden door, warmth and sound rush out to greet you. Candles burn in every corner. Dozens of them, their light trembling like hope. The scent of tallow, incense, and damp wool fills the air. You find your usual place on the rough bench near the back. The stone walls sweat with condensation, the breath of 100 villagers mingling in pale clouds. The priest stands near the altar, his voice echoing off the walls as he begins the sermon. He speaks of endurance, of patience, of the trials of the cold. He tells the story of a saint who once survived a blizzard by praying for 3 nights straight until his body froze and his soul rose with the dawn. The villagers nod solemnly, though you can't help thinking that prayer alone might not have helped if the man hadn't found a good cloak first. You glance around the room. Old faces, young faces, faces lined with frostbite scars. Every expression carries the same quiet determination, the look of people who've outlasted too many winters to be impressed by another. Faith, here, isn't dramatic, it's practical. You don't pray for miracles, You pray for firewood to last and for the river ice to hold. A baby starts crying somewhere near the front. Its mother hushes it gently, rocking back and forth. The sound cuts through the priest's voice for a moment, but he doesn't mind. Life interrupting liturgy, he's used to it. Then, the choir begins. Just 5 voices, cracked with age, rising against the heavy air. The hymn is slow, sorrowful, and somehow beautiful. It speaks of frozen ground and thawing hearts, of light that never truly dies. You feel it stir something inside you, a warmth that isn't from the candles or the bodies around you but from the shared rhythm of breath and belief. When the song ends, the priest lights a small brazier of coals beside the altar and gestures for the villagers to come forward one by one. Each person holds their hands above the heat, murmuring a prayer. When your turn comes, you step forward, the glow reflecting off your face. You stretch out your fingers, feeling the warmth seep into the cracks of your skin. It's not much, but somehow, it feels sacred. May your hearth never fail. The priest whispers as you pass. You nod. May your coals never die. Outside, the light is blinding after the dim gold of the church. Snow crunches underfoot as people scatter back toward their homes. Some chatting quietly, others walking in silence. You linger for a moment near the small wooden cross that stands beside the chapel door. A thin layer of frost coats it, glittering in the sun. You reach out and brush it with your gloved hand, leaving a clean patch behind. The world feels still again, as if the air itself is listening. You find yourself whispering without meaning to, if faith is warmth, then let it burn slow. As you walk home, the rhythm of the hymn stays with you. The melody loops in your mind, simple, persistent. A kind of music that was never written down but always remembered. You hum it softly under your breath. At home, your wife looks up as you enter. You stayed long, she says. Needed to thaw my soul a bit. You reply with a smile. She chuckles. Did it work? You think for a moment. Mostly, still frozen in places. Then sit by the fire, she says, patting the stool beside her. You do, letting the warmth creep back into your fingers, your face, your chest. You tell her about the sermon, about the story of the saint who froze while praying. She laughs gently. Maybe he should have prayed for a blanket. You grin. That's exactly what I thought. The two of you fall quiet, staring into the fire. The flames move slowly, steady, the same rhythm as your breath. Outside, the snow continues to fall, covering the fields, the roofs, the graves in the churchyard. Each flake lands silently, and you can almost imagine the world praying in its own wordless way, each breath of wind, each falling crystal a whisper to the sky. You realize then that faith doesn't live in cathedrals or Latin prayers. It lives in moments like this. In the heat of shared breath. In the rhythm of simple work. In the quiet acceptance that the world is harsh but worth enduring. When you go to bed that night, the hymn still echoes faintly in your mind. Though frost may bind, and fire may fade, the light within will not decay. You murmur it once before sleep takes you. And as the wind hums outside and the last ember glows faintly on the hearth, you understand, your faith, like your fire, doesn't roar, it flickers, but it never dies. Morning breaks gray and dim, a pale light bleeding through the frost on your window. You can already hear it, the low rumble of hooves outside. The creak of wooden harnesses. The wet snort of an animal exhaling clouds of steam into the cold. You pull on your cloak and step outside. And the air bites instantly. Sharp enough to wake every nerve in your skin. Your ox stands there, massive and patient, its breath fogging around its muzzle. The frost has turned its eyelashes white. You rest a hand on its broad neck, feeling the faint, steady warmth under your palm. "Morning, old friend," you murmur. The beast flicks an ear in acknowledgement and shifts its weight. For all your effort, all your sweat and cleverness, this creature does more for your survival than you ever could. The ox drags wood, plows frozen soil, hauls barrels of water and sacks of grain through snow thick enough to swallow a man's boots. And it does it all without complaint. Well, mostly without complaint. You scratch behind its ear, and it leans its heavy head against your shoulder, almost knocking you over. All right, you laugh. Breakfast first. You lead it to the trough, where frozen hay waits beneath a light dusting of snow. The animal eats slowly, chewing with the rhythm of eternity. You envy it a little. You'll never understand how something so large can seem so calm while the world freezes around it. Nearby, your donkey stamps impatiently, the bells on its harness jingling. You grin. Yes, I haven't forgotten you. The donkey brays loudly, as if to accuse you of terrible neglect. Drama, you mutter. Pure drama. You toss it a bundle of hay, which it sniffs, decides is beneath its dignity, then eats anyway. The beasts are everything in winter. They plow, they carry, they warm. Their bodies generate more heat than a dozen fires. Sometimes you press your hands against the ox's side just to feel the steady pulse of life there. Strong and certain. When you walk beside them through a snowstorm, you can lean into their flanks, shielded from the wind. You remember your father's words. A man without his beasts in winter is already halfway to the grave. You hadn't understood it then, but you do now. Even the smallest animals earn their keep. The dog patrols the perimeter, tail stiff, barking into the dark whenever a wolf's howl echoes from the woods. The chickens, though they lay fewer eggs in the cold, still cluck and fuss like gossiping grandmothers, filling the barn with sound. Even their noise feels like warmth. Today, you have work to do. You hitch the ox to the sled, the ropes stiff with frost. Your fingers ache as you pull the knots tight. We've got wood to fetch, you say. The ox blinks, unimpressed. The donkey flicks its tail. The dog, of course, is thrilled. You set off down the narrow path toward the forest. The sled creaks behind you, leaving twin trails in the snow. The ox moves at its usual pace, slow but unstoppable. The donkey trudges alongside, muttering in low, nasal protests. The dog runs circles around you all, tail slicing through the snow like a banner. The forest looms ahead, dark and deep, the branches heavy with white. Every step forward feels like entering a cathedral of silence. Snow falls from the trees in soft bursts, landing on your hood. The only sounds are the crunch of hooves and the steady rasp of your breath. You stop once to rest. Leaning on the sled, the ox turns its great head and exhales a puff of steam right into your face. "Thank you," you say dryly. "I was just thinking I needed a sauna." If animals could smirk, yours just did. You load the sled with fallen branches, working quickly before your fingers go numb. The ox waits, unbothered, chewing a mouthful of snow. The donkey stamps impatiently, as though offended by the pace of the world. You glance at them both and shake your head. You two are like an old married couple. You mutter. When you finally turn back toward home, the sled piled high. The sun is already low. The wind picks up, tugging at your cloak, making the ropes groan. The path is harder now. But the ox doesn't slow. Step by step, breath by breath, it pulls the weight forward. Watching it, you think of the people in your village, how they move through winter the same way. Quietly, relentlessly, no grand speeches, no heroics, just motion. You wonder if that's why people carve animals into church pews and paint them in holy books, not because they're symbols of strength, but because they remind us what endurance looks like. By the time you reach the village, dusk has fallen, smoke curls from chimneys, glowing orange against the blue-gray sky. You unhitch the ox, patting its side. Good work, old soul. It flicks its tail once, which you take as a thank you. Inside the barn, the air is warm and thick with the smell of hay. You brush snow from the animals' backs, lay down fresh straw, and light a small lantern. The glow softens the shadows, turning the barn into something almost holy. The ox settles down, the donkey sighs, and even the dog curls up by the door. You sit on the edge of a hay bale, listening to the rhythmic breathing around you. The warmth is faint but steady. You realize that this sound, this smell, this shared existence, is the real heartbeat of the village. The rich may have tapestries, kings may have gold, but you have this. Creatures that give without question. Warmth that asks for nothing but care in return. You reach out and rest your hand on the ox's back. You're a better Christian than most of us. You whisper. It exhales softly, a sound that might almost be agreement. When you step back outside, the stars are bright, the sky clear for the first time in days. Your breath curls into the cold air, and for a moment, you feel perfectly balanced between earth and heaven. One man, one small fire, one team of beasts that carried you through another day. You smile and murmur to the night, "We all pull something, don't we?" Then you head inside, the warmth of the barn still clinging to your skin. The rhythm of hooves and breath still echoing in your ears, a quiet hymn of survival. The wind tonight feels crueler than usual, sharp and dry, like invisible knives scraping across your cheeks. You pull your scarf higher, but it doesn't help much. By the time you reach the door, your skin feels as tight as old leather. You can almost hear it crack when you smile. Inside, the fire is burning low. Your wife sits nearby, rubbing her hands with something that glistens faintly in the light. You squint. "What's that?" "Medicine," she says, "or vanity, depending on who you ask." You step closer and catch the smell, earthy, faintly sour. "Is that fat?" She grins. "Boar fat, mixed with ash and a bit of beeswax. The women at the well said it keeps the skin from cracking." You stare. "You're telling me you're smearing barbecue grease on your face?" "Better than bleeding cheeks," she says sweetly, and continues rubbing it in with practiced fingers. You shake your head but can't argue. The cold of a medieval winter doesn't just freeze bones, it eats skin. You've seen men come in from the fields with their faces split open from frostbite. Lips blue and stiff. Hands so dry they leave flakes like snow wherever they touch. In a world with no soap worth using and no hot water to spare. Skincare is less about beauty and more about survival. You remember how your mother used to treat frostburn. She'd rub your face with lard. Then sprinkle a little soot on top, for warmth. She'd say, you'd walk around looking like a chimney sweep. But your skin never cracked. People have their own remedies everywhere. Some swear by goose fat. Others by rendered tallow or even marrow from bones. The monks in the hills use olive oil. Though no one's sure how they get it. Probably some miracle involving southern traders and divine intervention. You sit by the fire, rubbing your own hands together. The skin feels rough, torn in places. You grab a bit of the mixture from your wife's bowl and sniff it cautiously. Smells like a tavern floor. You say. Then it's perfect for you. She replies. You dab some onto your hands. It's thick and greasy, but almost instantly, you feel relief. The sting fades, replaced by a strange warmth. You look at your hands in the firelight, shiny. Ridiculous. Alive. Feels like I dipped myself in a candle, you mutter. Now you won't fall apart before spring, she says, turning her palms toward the fire. The truth is, the cold doesn't just wear down walls and roofs, it wears down people. Skin splits, lips bleed, hair turns brittle. You've seen women braid animal grease into their hair to keep it from breaking. And men coat their boots, and sometimes their feet, with pig fat to keep them from freezing. The smell of the village in winter is memorable. A mix of smoke, sweat, and livestock fat. And yet, it works. You glance at your reflection in a small iron pot beside the fire. The surface is dark and warped, but you can still make out your face, cracked lips, wind-burned cheeks, a beard speckled with frost. You look half wild, half frozen. I look like a roasted potato. You say. Then you're properly seasoned for the season. Your wife answers, completely serious. You both burst out laughing. The children giggled too, watching you shine your face like a knight polishing his armor. Your daughter asks, Papa, why do people care about skin? You pause, thinking, because it's the only part of us the cold can see. You say finally, we have to show it we're not afraid. Your wife gives you a look that's equal parts affection and disbelief. You just made that up. Of course, you reply, but it sounded wise, didn't it? She rolls her eyes, smiling. You settle back near the fire. Your hands sticky but warm. The smell of rendered fat mingles with the smoke and the faint sweetness of dried herbs hanging above. It's not pleasant, exactly, but it's human, real, stubborn, alive. Outside, the wind howls, rattling the shutters. You remember hearing that some nobles in far-off cities wear perfumed gloves in winter, soaked in almond oil, stitched with silk, to keep their hands soft. You imagine one of them visiting your hut, gagging at the scent of survival. The thought makes you grin. They may smell nice, you say aloud, but they'd never last a week out here. Your wife glances over. Who are you talking to? History, you say. I'm making sure it remembers we had better skin than the kings. She snorts. You look like an old boot. An oiled old boot, you correct proudly. You both laugh again, the sound blending with the crackle of the fire. After a while, The warmth and the faint scent of beeswax start to lull you. The air feels softer, your skin less tight, the ache in your fingers fading. You realize, with a kind of quiet wonder, that the simplest things, the smell of fat, the warmth of a hearth, the roughness of your wife's laughter, are the best defenses against a season that wants to erase you. Before bed, she hands you a small pot of the mixture. "Keep this near you," she says. "If your hands crack again, use it." You take it solemnly, as if she's given you a holy relic. "Thank you, my apothecary." She chuckles. "Just don't eat it." No promises. You blow out the candle. The room's sinking into darkness. The smell of fat and smoke lingers. Oddly comforting. You tuck the little pot near the hearth. Close your eyes, and let the warmth settle into your bones. The wind scratches at the window again, searching for weakness, but finds none. Your skin, greasy, glowing, indestructible, has become armor. And somewhere in the dark, you smile, because for tonight, the cold hasn't won. By now, you've learned that surviving a medieval winter isn't about strength, it's about creativity. Every family in the village has its own little tricks, passed down like secrets, whispered over mugs of warm ale or shared beside the smokehouse door. None of them are elegant. Most of them are a little ridiculous. But they work. You wake before dawn, because the cold always does. The air is sharp, your breath forming small ghosts in the dark. The fire's gone out again, reduced to a pale nest of ash. You mutter a curse at it, because that's tradition, too, and then you start the morning ritual. The absurd art of keeping yourself alive. First trick, sleeping with stones. Not the romantic kind carved by sculptors, but real ones. River rocks heated in the fire until they glow faintly. Then wrapped in old rags and tucked beneath the blankets. You pull one out now, it's still faintly warm. A faithful little sun that spent the night keeping your feet from turning into ice. You rub your hands over it, grateful, and set it back in the hearth to reheat for tonight. Your wife stirs, mumbling, "Stones still warm?" You grin, "Warmer than I am." She chuckles softly, then trade places with it. Second trick, double straw. The old-timers taught you this one, when the frost grows heavy. You don't just sleep on straw, you sleep in it. A mattress below, another layer on top, tucked around like a cocoon. You learned that last winter when a neighbor froze to death sitting upright by the hearth. Now, the moment the cold deepens, you bury yourself like a hibernating bear. It's messy, itchy, and effective. You glance toward the children, still asleep under a mountain of straw and blankets. Only their noses visible, the dog's wedged in there too, snoring loudly, his paws twitching in dreams. They've mastered the art, you whisper. Third trick, breathing smoke. No one admits it, but the village houses are built to leak smoke on purpose. Not too much, just enough to leave a thin haze beneath the rafters. It stings your eyes and blackens the walls. But it keeps frost from clinging to the beams and kills the insects hiding in the straw. The nobles might choke in horror at the smell, but you'd rather cough through a smoky winter than freeze in a clean one. You throw a few more logs, well, things vaguely resembling logs, onto the fire. The smoke curls lazily, and you breathe it in, chest burning slightly. It's oddly comforting, like the scent of safety. Fourth trick, eating heat. That's what the old healer calls it. You look over the day's meager rations, onions, garlic, oats, and one precious pinch of pepper traded last autumn. You boil them all together in a single pot. The smell is rough but inviting. The first spoonful hits your tongue, and it feels like swallowing sunlight. Spices are rare, expensive, but they're your best defense. Heat you can carry inside your body when the world offers none. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth spreading through you. Your wife joins, muttering that it tastes like punishment. You nod. A warm punishment's better than a cold blessing. She rolls her eyes. You sound like rule again. Wisdom's contagious, you say, grinning. Fifth trick, sleeping with coals. It's the most dangerous one. You wrap a small pot of hot embers in clay and cloth. Set it near the bed, and pray it doesn't roll. Many houses have burned down that way. But the survivors all say the same thing. It was worth the risk. You think about doing it tonight. You've gotten good at judging how close warmth can come before it turns to danger. Survival teaches you that fine line between heat and ruin. Sixth trick, animal timekeeping. You've learned to measure hours not by clocks but by sound. The donkey brays when the first light hits. The dog shifts position when midnight passes. The rooster doesn't crow at dawn anymore, it's too cold, but when he finally does, you know it's safe to move again. In winter, animals keep better time than any bell. You glance at the window. The faintest pale glow is forming at the horizon. Almost morning, you step outside to fetch water, and the cold slaps you hard enough to take your breath away. The bucket's frozen solid again. You upend it, knock it on the ground, and mutter the seventh trick aloud like a spell. Snow is water if you talk nice to it. You scoop fresh snow into a pot, carry it inside, and set it by the fire. Soon, it melts, slow, reluctant. You watch it turn from white to clear. Steam rising like proof that the world can change if you're patient enough. Your wife catches you staring. What are you thinking? That we're better magicians than the priests. You say, we make warmth out of air, water out of clouds, food out of scraps. She smiles, tired but amused. Don't get proud. The cold will hear you. Eighth trick, humor. You laugh anyway, because laughter is warmth without fuel. It costs nothing, burns bright, and spreads fast. When the children wake, you tell them today's challenge. Who can go all day without complaining about the cold? The winner gets the last dried apple. They take it seriously, heroically even. The boy lasts until he touches the frozen spoon. The girl lasts until she sits on the icy bench. The dog wins. By afternoon, the wind howls again, fierce and unrelenting. You tighten the door latch, feed the fire, and whisper the last trick to yourself, the one no one really talks about. Endure quietly. Because the truth is, survival isn't always clever or noble. Sometimes it's just a matter of sitting still while the storm rages, counting breaths, and refusing to let the cold convince you you're alone. You sit by the fire, your wife sewing beside you, the children playing with scraps of straw, the dog twitching in dreams. The air smells of smoke and stew and life. Outside, the world is frozen solid. Inside, something small and invisible keeps burning. You lean back, whispering to no one in particular. We'll make it through. We always do. And when the wind shrieks louder, you grin. Because you know its secret now. It howls not because it's strong, but because it's cold. And you're not. The cold you can fight. The darkness you can light. But hunger, that's the quiet enemy that creeps in while you're busy pretending everything's fine. You feel it first as a hollow ache, a sort of echo inside your ribs. By late January, the cupboards are thin and the jokes about dinner have lost their humor. You open the storage chest and stare into it, as if by will alone you could make bread appear. Inside, a few shriveled onions, a heel of hard cheese, and what used to be carrots before they lost the will to live. You sigh, turning to your wife. We're down to creative cooking. She raises an eyebrow. We passed creative cooking 2 weeks ago. We're into interpretive. You can't help but laugh. Though it's a dry sound. The truth is, every family in the village is in the same place. The winter stores always seem enough in autumn. But by midwinter, you realize the math was wrong. The cold eats faster than people do. You stir the pot anyway, making the day's meal, water, onions, a pinch of salt, and the kind of hope that adds flavor if you imagine hard enough. By noon, the smell of thin soup fills the room. The children sit quietly, not complaining, just watching. That's how you know it's getting bad. Hunger doesn't make noise after a while, it just waits. When you pass the bowls around, your daughter whispers, "Papa, do we have any bread?" You shake your head. Tomorrow. Tomorrow has become a sacred word. Tomorrow means not today. Tomorrow means we'll figure it out later. You've been saying it so often it almost feels true. Later that afternoon, you bundle yourself in your cloak and head toward the woods. You tell your wife you're checking traps, though you haven't caught anything in days. The snow is deep, the sky low, the world eerily quiet. You can hear the crunch of every step like a heartbeat. Your traps are empty. Again, you kick at the snow and mutter, "Even the rabbits are smarter than me." You find a patch of bark stripped clean from a tree and remember another old trick, hunger bark. You pull a knife and cut a strip of the inner layer. Soft and pale, you chew on it for a while, it tastes like bitterness and desperation. You laugh quietly, imagining a monk somewhere writing a recipe. Bark stew. Serves 4. Best enjoyed with delusion. On the walk back, you pass your neighbor Rule, trudging along with a bundle of twigs. "Find anything?" you call. "Roots," he says grimly, "and a dead crow. Half a crow, technically." You stare at him. "You're going to eat it?" He grins through cracked lips. "Better than it eating me." You both laugh, though neither of you finds it funny. When you return home, your wife's face lights up, not because you're holding food, you're not. But because you came back at all. The cold, the snow, the wolves, it's never guaranteed. You hand her the bark and shrug. "Dinner?" She sighs but smiles. "At least it's new." You sit together that night chewing the kind of meal that would make future generations weep. It's tough, bitter, and unsatisfying, but it fills the space where hunger hurts most, if only for an hour. Later, you share the last piece of cheese between you and your wife. You break it evenly, though both of you pretend to give the larger half away. It's the small rituals that keep pride alive. The children sleep early, bellies half full but dreams intact. You sit by the dying fire. Your wife beside you. "I remember when we had more than we needed," she says softly. You nod, And I remember when we had less. The trick is not to stop remembering. You think about the stories you've heard from older winters, of people eating boiled leather, of stew made from moss, of famine so deep that whole villages vanished like candle smoke. The thought chills you more than the wind ever could. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. The dog at your feet growls in reply. You toss another scrap of wood onto the fire, not because it needs it, but because you can't stand to see it fade. Some historians, you say after a long silence, still argue whether people really ate bark in winters like this. Your wife smirks faintly. Tell them they can come try it themselves. You both laugh quietly, and for a moment, the sound fills the hut with warmth stronger than any stew. When the laughter fades, you sit in silence again. The hunger doesn't go away, it never does, but you learn to live with it. To make it small, to keep it in its place. Hunger is a guest you can't evict, so you teach it manners. Before bed, you scrape the last bits of ash and melted snow from the pot. Your wife wraps the children tighter, humming softly under her breath. The sound is fragile but beautiful, a lullaby for empty stomachs and stubborn hearts. You lie down beside her, feeling the ache of the day settle deep. The roof creaks, the wind sighs. You whisper into the dark, tomorrow, we'll find more. It's not a promise, it's a spell. And somehow, that's enough to fall asleep to. You'd think no one would marry in the dead of winter, but people do. Maybe because life feels so fragile that love becomes a kind of rebellion. Or maybe because when everything else is frozen, a warm hand in yours feels like a miracle. It starts with bells, soft, uneven, not the grand chime of cathedrals but the clinking of pots and spoons tied together. You step outside your hut, the snow crisp beneath your boots, and see a small procession winding through the village. The bride's cloak is white, not by choice but because it's the only color that matches the snow. The groom's breath fogs in front of him like a nervous spirit. Behind them, villagers follow with torches and laughter that cuts clean through the cold. You smile, watching them pass. A winter wedding, it seems impossible. Yet here they are, stubbornly proving that joy can bloom even in frost. The ceremony happens at the chapel, its roof heavy with snow. Inside, it smells of tallow candles and pine branches. The walls sweat from the heat of so many bodies packed close together. The priest's breath fogs as he speaks, his voice trembling between solemnity and shivering. Do you take her, he asks, to keep warm together in sickness, hunger, and the long winters ahead? The groom answers, I. The bride laughs softly before saying, I do, if he chops the wood. The villagers chuckle, even the priest smiles. The couple exchange rings made of braided straw and thin wire. Someone throws dried grain instead of flowers. It lands like soft rain on their shoulders. Outside, the wind howls, impatient to remind everyone what world they live in. But inside, it's all warmth and hands clasped tight. Afterward, the celebration begins, not in a hall of marble or feast-laden tables, but in the largest barn in the village. The animals are moved aside, the floor swept clean, and benches lined up along the walls. Someone's brought a fiddle, someone else a drum, and someone, a genius, truly, has found enough ale to make everyone forget their toes are numb. You stand near the back, watching as people begin to dance. The bride's cheeks glow pink, her laughter bubbling up like spring water. The groom looks like he can't believe his luck. Even old Rule, toothless and cheerful, is clapping along with the rhythm. You sip your drink and feel the warmth spread, not from the ale, but from the sight of it all. The flicker of lamplight on snow-dusted faces. The stomp of boots. The sound of joy daring to exist where reason says it shouldn't. Someone tugs your sleeve. It's your wife. "Come on," she says. "Dance." You shake your head. "My knees are older than that groom." She laughs. "Then wobble instead of dance." And before you can protest, she's pulled you into the crowd. The floor creaks. The air hums. And suddenly you're moving, awkwardly, gracelessly, wonderfully. You stumble once, twice, but she steadies you with both hands, her eyes bright with amusement. "Still think you can't dance?" she teases. "I'm proving it quite well," you say, breathless with laughter. Around you, the barn becomes a world unto itself. Snow presses against the walls. But inside there's sweat, music, and the smell of hay and ale and life. A baby cries somewhere, quickly soothed. A couple of men start singing an old harvest song, their voices cracked but proud. Between dances, people share food, small things, but offered freely. A crust of bread here, a sliver of cheese there, even a bit of honey passed around like treasure. No one has much, but tonight, everyone gives what they can. You find yourself next to the bride and groom, who are laughing as they feed each other from a wooden bowl. "So," you say, "what possessed you to marry in January? Were you afraid you might thaw and change your minds by spring?" The groom grins. "If we can survive this cold together, we can survive anything." The bride adds, "Besides, all the good dates were taken by plagues and harvests." You raise your cup. "Fair enough." The music picks up again. Faster now. The younger ones dance until their breath fogs the air. The older ones sit, clapping along, remembering when they too could twirl through the dark without fear of breaking something vital. You and your wife join the latter group eventually, sitting shoulder to shoulder, hands warm from holding each other's. "This is what keeps the cold away," she says quietly. "What, dancing?" "No," she murmurs, leaning her head against your shoulder. "Belonging." You look around, the laughter, the music, the shared breath of 100 souls packed into one barn against a howling world. She's right, this is warmth no hearth could make. The fire crackles, someone shouts for another song, and outside, the snow falls silently, uninvited but ignored. As the night goes on, stories begin to surface. Tales of weddings where the wine froze solid mid-toast. Of brides who rode to church on sleds. Of grooms who fainted from cold before the vows were done. Everyone laughs, because laughter is how people remind themselves they've lived to tell the tale. When it's finally time to leave, the couple steps out into the snow, torches held high. The entire village gathers to cheer. The night sky above them is full of stars, cold, distant, eternal, and yet somehow, beneath them, everything feels bright and fragile and human. You watch as the new husband takes his wife's hand. She slips. He steadies her, and they both laugh. For a moment, you think how absurdly beautiful it is. That love still chooses to bloom in a season that kills almost everything else. You turn to your wife. Squeeze her hand gently, and whisper, "We should have married in winter." She smiles. "We did, every year." The two of you walk home through the snow. The faint echo of music trailing behind. The night feels warmer than it should. And for once, the stars don't look cold at all. The wedding laughter fades over the next few days, swallowed by the silence that always follows joy in winter. The wind returns, harder now, and with it comes a darkness that feels deeper than before. This is the stretch every villager fears, the long night. The time when days barely exist and the world feels caught between dusk and dawn. Unsure which way to lean. You wake one morning unsure if it's still night. The light leaking through the shutters is gray. Heavy, almost shy. The fire has died again, leaving only cold ashes that whisper when you stir them. You can see your breath hanging above you like a ghost that refuses to leave. Your wife murmurs beside you, half asleep. "Still dark? Still everything," you answer. You move slowly, careful not to wake the children. The air feels thick, pressing against your skin. You light the fire with trembling fingers, coaxing a spark from stubborn flint. It catches. Finally, the flame small and sullen like it resents being awake. You know the feeling. Outside, there's no sound, no birds, no creak of wagon wheels, not even a dog barking. Just the wind, always the wind. It whistles through cracks in the walls. The sound thin and mournful. It finds every weakness, every forgotten gap, and reminds you that winter always wins in the end. It just lets you pretend otherwise for a while. You step outside for water, pulling your cloak tight. The sky is the color of slate. The sun nothing more than a pale smear hiding behind clouds. Snow lies deep and untouched, so still it looks like the world has stopped breathing. The silence unnerves you. Even your own footsteps feel intrusive, like breaking some ancient rule. You half expect the world to shush you. When you reach the well, you find the rope frozen stiff, the bucket sealed in a collar of ice. You have to chip it free with your knife, each strike echoing like a shout. The ice cracks reluctantly, releasing the bucket with a wet sigh. You lower it, hear the faint splash below, and pull up water so cold it burns your palms. By the time you return, your hands are stiff and aching. You set the bucket down by the hearth and stare into the small flame that's slowly growing bolder. Its light flickers across the walls, revealing the little imperfections, the frost creeping along the wood, the drips that froze mid-fall. Even inside, winter leaves its fingerprints. You sit for a long time, just listening. The children wake one by one, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Faces pale in the dim light. No one talks much during the long night. Words feel too fragile, as if speaking too loudly might summon something from the dark. After breakfast, thin porridge, more steam than substance. You find yourself staring at the window again. It's not truly dark outside, but neither is it light. The day has stopped halfway between the two. You can't tell whether hours are passing or simply looping in place. Your wife notices. "Don't drift," she says softly. "That's when the cold finds you." She's right. The long night plays tricks on the mind. You've seen strong men sit by the fire, staring at nothing for hours, until someone had to shake them back into the world. The healers call it the winter days. You call it forgetting to be alive. So you move, you chop wood, even though you barely need more. You check the traps, though you know they're empty. You mend old tools, sweep already clean floors, anything to remind yourself that time is still moving. Even if the sun's forgotten how to show it. By midday, if it can be called that, the faintest light touches the snow outside. You step out again just to feel it on your face. The sun is weak, an old man leaning on his cane. But it's still there. You close your eyes and let it rest on your skin. For a moment, you imagine spring. You can almost hear the rush of meltwater, the chatter of birds, the sigh of thawing soil. It feels like remembering a dream. Then the wind shifts, and the illusion breaks. You return inside, where the warmth feels thin but loyal. Your wife is humming quietly while she sews. The children lying on the floor playing with pebbles and scraps of string. The fire pops softly, throwing small sparks like fleeting stars. You sit beside her and ask, "Do you ever feel like winter stretches forever?" She smiles faintly, not looking up. "That's because we count the dark, not the light, but they're equal, if you add them up." You consider that, and what if the light loses? Then we'll make more. There's something in her voice, steady. Sure, that makes you believe it. You reach for her hand, fingers rough against hers. "We've made it through worse." You whisper. "Maybe," she says, squeezing your hand gently. But the worst doesn't always know it's the worst until it's over. You both fall silent again. The fire flickers. The children whisper. The wind hums outside. The hours slide past in slow, deliberate motions. At some point, you realize the light has changed. It's not brighter, just different. A hint of blue, maybe. A promise pretending to be a fact. When night finally returns, if it ever truly left, you're almost grateful. Darkness, at least, is honest. You know where you stand with it. You bank the fire, settle the children, and crawl under the blankets beside your wife. You whisper, "We'll wake to more light tomorrow." "Maybe," she murmurs, "or maybe we'll just wake." Either way, it's enough. You listen to the wind for a while. It sounds less like a threat tonight, more like a lullaby in a language you'll never understand. The fire hums softly, the last ember pulsing like a heartbeat. And as you drift towards sleep, you realize something. The long night isn't the enemy. It's the teacher. It reminds you what light truly costs, and why it's worth waiting for. The first real sunrise comes almost without warning. You wake to a brightness that feels wrong, soft but unfamiliar, filtering through the cracks in the shutters. For a moment, you think the house is on fire. Then you realize, the light is gold, not red. The air glows with it. You blink, sit up, and your breath catches in your throat. Sunlight. Actual sunlight. You throw on your cloak and rush outside. Boots half-laced, heart pounding like you're late for something sacred. The world is still white, still frozen, but now it sparkles. The snow has turned to glass under the touch of light. The air itself seems alive, every crystal, every breath illuminated. For the first time in weeks, the shadows fall long instead of endless. You tilt your face toward the sky. It burns, not with heat, but with reminder. The sun feels smaller than you remember. Shy maybe, like it's checking to see if it's still welcome here. You close your eyes and let it touch your skin. It stings a little. You don't mind. Behind you, the door creaks open. Your wife steps out, squinting. "It's real?" You grin. Either that, or I've finally gone mad and invented light. She laughs, the sound carrying into the air like music the wind forgot. The children burst out next. Wrapped in blankets, shouting and laughing, they race into the snow. Their footprints carving wild spirals through the glittering white. Even the dog joins them, bounding clumsily, barking at the brightness as though trying to chase it away. The whole village begins to stir. Doors open, shutters creak, figures emerge like bears from hibernation. For a long time, no one speaks, they just look. After so much gray, the world feels impossibly colored, even the brown of bare branches. The faint blue in the snow's shadow. You catch old Rule standing near his hut, blinking at the sky with tears frozen to his beard. Never thought I'd see it again, he says softly. You clap him on the shoulder. It was only a few weeks. A few weeks too long, he mutters. Then he sniffs and grins. You think it's judging us for how we've been living? Probably, you reply, but it'll forgive us. The sun's vain, it likes being needed. You both laugh, and it feels easy, natural, unforced. As the morning stretches, the air begins to change. You feel it, not warmth exactly, but mercy. The snow softens around the edges, melting just enough to reveal hints of brown earth beneath. Water drips from the eaves, each drop falling like the tick of a clock restarting after a long pause. The entire world exhales. Inside, the house looks different too. The light seeps in, painting everything gold, the rough table, the battered pot, the straw bed, the faces of your sleeping children. It's not that anything has changed, it's just that everything is visible again. You realize how much you've missed the color of things. Your wife stands by the window, her hands resting on the sill. Do you hear that? She whispers. At first, you don't, then you catch it, a faint sound. Distant but sure. Birds. Just two of them, their calls thin and trembling, like the world remembering how to sing. You laugh quietly. Even the birds are surprised. The rest of the day passes in a kind of reverence. No one wants to waste it. The men drag chairs outside just to sit in the light. The women hang linens that haven't been dry in months. Children roll in the snow, squealing as if it's brand new. Every act feels ceremonial, every motion an offering to the returning sun. By midday, the snow begins to sparkle with hints of blue and gold. You kneel to touch it. It's still cold, biting, sharp, but you swear it doesn't hate you anymore. You spend the afternoon repairing the roof, humming to yourself. You'd almost forgotten how it felt to sweat. Even a little. The air smells faintly of thawing earth, of smoke and promise. Somewhere down the road, someone starts playing a fiddle. Slow and wistful, the tune drifts through the air like warmth. When you climb down, your wife hands you a cup of water, not frozen. For once, you drink deeply, the cold liquid hitting your throat like a shock. Then settling into satisfaction, you meet her eyes and see the same thing you feel, relief. Cautious but real. It'll still snow again, you say. Of course, she answers, but now we know the sun remembers the way back. The words hang in the air, as bright as the light spilling through the doorway. That evening, the sunset comes later than it has in months. You stand outside as the sky burns orange, pink, and violet, the kind of colors you'd forgotten existed. The snow catches every hue. reflecting them back until it feels like the ground itself is glowing. You breathe deeply. The air is still cold, but softer now, less of a threat, more of a test you've already passed. When darkness finally returns, it's gentler. The stars seem closer, the moon warmer. Inside, the fire crackles, but it's not the only light anymore. The walls gleam faintly with the memory of day. Your wife lies beside you. The children asleep between you. You whisper, "It's strange, isn't it? How something as simple as the sun can feel like a miracle." She smiles in the dark. It's not simple when you've lived without it. You close your eyes. The faint glow still painted on your eyelids. The warmth of the day lingers on your skin. Delicate but steady. You can almost hear the snow melting outside, a slow, patient rhythm. The long night has ended. And though you know winter isn't done, you also know something deeper. It never truly wins. The sun always returns, not out of mercy, but because the world itself refuses to forget the light. You drift into sleep with that thought. The faint warmth of dawn already waiting somewhere ahead. The sun keeps its promise. A few days later, the snow begins to surrender, not suddenly, but with a slow, steady grace, like an old warrior laying down his weapon. The ground still crunches underfoot, but you can smell earth again. Wet, dark, alive. You wake to the sound of dripping water. At first it's faint, one drop. Then another, but soon it's everywhere. The eaves, the trees, the roof beams. The world is thawing. You lie there for a while, listening. It's the sound of patience being rewarded. When you finally step outside, the air hits you differently. Still cold, but lighter. It no longer presses down, it brushes past. Testing, curious. The snowbanks have shrunk into soft mounds streaked with mud. A few brave shoots of green poke through like scouts sent ahead of an army. Your wife follows you out, holding a small basket. Today, she announces, we find something fresh. The word sounds foreign on her tongue, like a spell that hasn't been spoken in months. You smile. You think the earth remembers us? It better, she says. We've fed it enough tears. The two of you walk toward the edge of the woods. Baskets in hand, the children run ahead, squealing at every puddle like they've discovered new continents. The dog bounds after them, splashing through the meltwater with ridiculous joy. In the forest, the smell is intoxicating, rot and growth in equal measure. Mushrooms pushing through damp logs. Moss rehydrating like it's inhaling after a long suffocation. You kneel near the base of a tree and spot what you're looking for, wild onions. Their pale shoots curling like question marks. You dig carefully, hands trembling slightly with excitement. Careful. Your wife warns. You bruise them. They'll taste like revenge. You laugh. I'll take any taste that isn't wood smoke or salt. She finds nettles soon after, young, green, sharp as honesty. You both pick carefully, your fingers remembering what it feels like to work for something that grows. By midday, the basket isn't full, but it's heavy enough to make you feel rich. You even find a few eggs near the barn when you return. The hens, emboldened by sunlight, have finally remembered their purpose. Look at that, you tell the children. Miracles, laid daily. They giggle. Can we eat all of them? You pause dramatically. Almost all. One for the gods. Which gods? You wink. Whichever ones are hungry. Inside, your wife starts the fire while you clean the onions. The smell of damp earth fills the room. When the first hiss of frying hits the pan, it's almost too much. The sound, the scent, the sheer aliveness of it. You both freeze, listening, smiling. This, she whispers, is what we've been waiting for. You nod. The first meal of spring. The stew is simple: nettles, onions, a bit of dried meat saved from the depths of winter, and one golden egg cracked in at the end. You stir it slowly, reverently. The steam rises in soft curls that smell like forgiveness. When you ladle it into bowls, everyone gathers close. Even the dog sits politely, as if understanding this is something holy. The first bite burns your tongue. The second warms your chest. The third, you close your eyes. It tastes like sunlight wearing the memory of snow. No one speaks for a while. The only sounds are spoons scraping bowls and sighs of satisfaction. After so many months of gray and cold and hunger, flavor feels like a miracle. Your son looks up suddenly. "Papa, is this what heaven tastes like?" You smile. "If it isn't, I'll complain when I get there." Laughter fills the room, real, unguarded, bubbling up like spring water. Afterward, your wife pours the last bit of broth into a cup and sets it by the window. "For good luck," she says, "or for whoever's still cold out there." You nod, watching the steam drift upward into the fading light. Outside, the snow continues to retreat, revealing forgotten things: a rusted bucket, a lost shoe, the green tips of weeds reclaiming the ground. The world looks both ruined and reborn. You understand now that those words mean the same thing in winter's language. That night, as the sun sinks behind the hills, you step outside again. The air smells of thawing soil and distant fires. Somewhere, water trickles, not loud enough to be a stream yet, but eager. You crouch and press your hand to the ground. It's still cold, but beneath it, faint, deep, you feel the pulse of something moving. Life, stretching, yawning, remembering. You whisper, "Welcome back." When you return inside, the children are already asleep, their bellies full for the first time in months. Your wife sits by the hearth, mending a basket, humming softly. You sit beside her and say, "Tomorrow we plant." "Tomorrow," she echoes, "and this time, maybe the world will listen." The two of you sit there in the quiet glow of the fire. Bowls stacked neatly, the smell of spring's first meal still clinging to the air. The hunger that haunted your bones has softened into gratitude. Outside, the frost continues to melt, drop by drop, heartbeat by heartbeat. And for the first time since autumn, the world feels possible again. The days lengthen quietly. You don't notice it at first, the small, subtle ways the light lingers, but one evening, you realize you're still chopping wood after dusk without needing the fire to see. The air smells different now, wetter, full of promise. The ground squelches beneath your boots instead of crunching. Winter hasn't disappeared, it's simply grown tired. You stop, leaning on your axe, and look out over the fields. The snow is almost gone, replaced by streaks of brown and green. The sky glows with the pale pink of a world remembering how to breathe again. You think back to the first frost, the panic, the silence, the endless nights. It feels like a story someone told you long ago, and you can't decide if it happened to you or to someone braver. Inside, Your wife is baking something. The smell hits you before you reach the door. Bread. Actual bread. Not the thin, desperate flat cakes of winter, but round loaves with a crust that sings when you tap it. You step inside, and the warmth embraces you like an old friend who never stopped believing you'd show up. Smells like survival, you say softly. She laughs, brushing flour from her hands. Smells like spring. The children sit near the hearth, playing with sticks that have become swords, crowns, and bridges in their small hands. Their laughter feels lighter now, no longer a rebellion. Just a natural thing. Even the dog seems to smile, tail sweeping the floor like a broom of joy. You tear off a piece of bread while it's still steaming and burn your fingers. Just to prove you're alive. The taste makes you close your eyes. We did it, you whisper. Your wife looks up. Of course we did. What else was there to do? You smile at that, at her calm certainty, her quiet defiance of despair. Survival, you realize, was never loud. It was built on small, ordinary miracles. A fire that caught, a laugh that rose, a heartbeat that didn't stop. You sit together as the evening light pours through the window, turning the room gold. The shadows are softer now. Even the silence feels gentler. After dinner, you step outside. The stars shimmer above, faint but clear. Somewhere beyond the fields, you hear the river again, awake and restless, cracking the last of its ice. The sound is low, rhythmic, a reminder that movement has returned to the world. You walk toward the edge of the village, where the snow still clings to the shaded hollows. You crouch and pick up a handful. It's wet now, melting fast. You let it slip through your fingers and drip into the soil. Goodbye, old enemy, you murmur, and thank you. Because the truth is, winter taught you everything worth knowing. How to work without hope. How to laugh without reason. How to keep a flame alive in a world built to smother it. When you return home, the fire is burning low. Your wife and children are already asleep. Faces soft, untroubled. You add one last piece of wood to the flames. It catches slowly, glowing bright before settling into a calm, steady burn. You sit beside it, staring into the orange light. The sound of the crackling logs blends with the distant trickle of thawing streams. For the first time in months, you feel no urgency, no fear of what comes next. You've crossed the season that breaks most men, and though it took parts of you, it left something stronger in return. You close your eyes. The warmth of the fire seeps into your skin. Deep and patient, you can still smell bread in the air. Still hear the faint laughter of your children in the walls. Still sense the soft pulse of life beneath the thawing ground. You breathe slowly, each exhale a release of cold you didn't know you were still carrying. The world outside murmurs, gentle again. You whisper to no one, to everyone, we survived. And in that quiet, you finally understand. Survival isn't victory, it's the beginning of peace. The flames flicker lower, the room softens into shadow, and the sounds of the night grow tender, wind in the eaves. Distant water, the rhythm of sleeping hearts. You lean back, the fire's last light painting gold on your closed eyelids. The weight of the season slips away, inch by inch. The story you've been living finally exhales. The frost has melted. The long night has ended. The warmth you built endures. The world hums softly around you. cradling you in its tired arms. And as your breathing slows, you hear yourself whisper one final time, barely a sound, barely a thought. Sweet dreams, my friend. Spring is here. End of script. Sweet dreams.